Hello and thanks once again for taking the time to download and listen to our podcast on CelticUnderground.net. I'm Harry Brady and this is podcast number 248.
We've already said
You wait ages for a podcast and then two come along at once. Goodness gracious. Anyway, just seems like moments ago I was speaking to you at the beginning of podcast number 248A, and that's because for me recording it, it was just moments ago. So this is the second part. This is the bit where Mark Cameron gets all nasty and does the cull of the squad. Yes, he looks at the people playing first team football for Celtic and the many others on the fringes and some playing elsewhere, and goes through a list of somewhere between 12 and 15 players who will not, in his eyes, be at Celtic Park for the beginning of our Champions League campaign next season. We'll see if he's right. Hopefully we bring in some quality players to replace those who have left, and better quality than most of them. Don't forget, we have the final game of the season coming up, and it's badge day on the trophy day, the game at Celtic Park against Inverness. It will be a very special badge to collect, so don't forget to bring your change. And if you want to help out, cfcfoundation@celticfc.co.uk is the email address to go to. Go online to the Celtic FC Foundation website or to the Celtic FC website, and you can get loads of stuff about what to do with the foundation, the Ben Nevis walk, etc. I think they're just looking for the final handful of bucket collectors. Well, I don't think it's the final handful. I think any number of people can help. It's a fantastic rewarding day. Please get involved. Or there's a Ben Nevis Foundation, the Ben Nevis huddle for the foundation. Get the words out. Anyway, enough of me. I'm quite excited by some of the guests we've got lined up. I'm really trying to do a good podcast for number 250. Provided he doesn't cancel on me, I've got a very, very interesting guest for number 249. Got some good guys lined up for 251, 252 and 253. It's going to keep you going all summer. I think the summer lasts about 2 weeks this season. Anyway, enough of me. This is me, Harry Brady, with him, Lefty Boy, Mark. So I'm joined now by Lefty Boy on Twitter, Mark Cameron. How you doing, Mark?
I'm very well.
I know you've been doing your research about the transformation of our current squad into next season. So, behold, listeners to the Celtic Underground podcast. It's quite a transformation, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I think this summer is going to be very, very interesting. I think there'll be a lot of movement. You think back to last summer, I don't think Ronnie expected to get the job, or he certainly didn't expect to get the number one job. So in some respects, he was almost a rabbit caught in the headlights with preparing the team for Champions League qualifiers. This season, I think he's going to have time. He's obviously assessed his first team pool. He does an incredible amount of trips to watch the development squad or the reserves or whatever they get called these days. He's going to a lot of those games, so he's seen what's coming through, and he's obviously got an eye for what he wants to do. So I think also he realises that he's got a rather large squad that he perhaps doesn't really need, and as we've said, he tends to stick with the same players. So he's got a nucleus of maybe 14 or 15 who he will rely on. And if they're fit, then they'll be in the starting 11, or they'll certainly be on the bench. And then I think there's quite a lot of players who are going to be surplus to requirements, who just aren't ever going to get in Ronnie's team. So I think it's going to be a very interesting, close season. As I said, I think there'll be a fair bit of movement out the way, and he's obviously had the opportunity to assess who he wants to bring in. And as we say every transfer window, about coming out of it stronger than you went in, that's key as well. But it's also important, I think, this time for the manager to get his first choices, because by now I'm pretty sure he'll know where he wants to strengthen, and he'll have been identifying players that he wants to bring in.
Well, you make the point about his preparations for last season. There is no way, you don't suddenly switch on Football Manager and pick out your best players. You have to do some scouting. You have to analyse whether they'll fit into your team and whether they'll fit into your system. He's certainly not, until relatively close to his appointment, he's going to be looking at a completely different class of player for Stromsgodden said that he would need for Celtic. So I have no doubt he had very little say in the people who came in.
Yes, I think so. I agree with that. And I think that was part of the reason why he went for so many loan deals, because he didn't truly know what he needed. And from that point of view, although a lot of people were upset at the time and frustrated that we weren't spending money, if you don't truly know what you need to be very careful about what you do but bring in. And for me, one of the question marks for this summer is Stefan Skepovic.
Mm-hmm.
Is he likely to see another season? I'm not so sure. I think if there's someone comes in and someone's interested in him, can maybe do a deal, then I think he'd be away.
So how many people in total out of the current squad can you see going in the summer?
From what I've looked at, Harry, I could see potentially up to 13 players going. That's a big number, isn't it?
Who are the 13?
Right. So we take them one at a time.
Yeah.
I would be worried about Charlie Mulgrew, whether he's going to stay or not. I suspect he may be looking to move on. He's had, due to injuries, had very few games this season. I'm not sure that if he was fit, that he would get anywhere near our first team. I can't see anyone there that he'd be close to dispossessing their first team jersey. Irrespective of what happens with the two centre backs, which we'll come to in a minute, I don't know that Mulgrew would get in that team.
Well, he certainly, if you consider the system that Ronnie Dyer has been playing, well, Mulgrew's options are centre half, left back, and the two in midfield. And principally, Ronnie Dyer only considered him for the two in midfield berth, and that would involve getting in ahead of Brown or Beaton. And if one of them's not fit, Ronnie Dyer's already demonstrated Armstrong and Johansson are in there. And
yes.
we're allegedly interested in Suter of Dundee United, who would play there.
Yes, exactly. So for me, I would be speculating that Charlie might be one for the off in the summer.
Okay.
I know that. Anthony Stokes. Something tells me that he might not survive for whatever reason. I think he's been in and out, and he's found it difficult to get a regular first team starting spot throughout the season. And I know we're really short on strikers, but I think Stokes and Skepovic are looking decidedly dodgy. I think we need different.
Well, I can only think of one, maybe two games that Ronnie Dyer has played Stokes as a striker. So
yes,
he obviously doesn't. Even with our challenges, he's obviously not fancied him as a striker.
No, definitely not.
And he's
definitely
played him
not.
wide left, and in the wide and in the wide position, in the three behind the striker role, we now have Johansson, Commons, Mackay-Steven, Armstrong,
Forrest. Yeah. Yes. And possibly Liam Henderson.
Yeah.
If he was to come back.
Who played another 20 minutes for Rosenborg again?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, did he?
Yeah.
All right. So,
25 minutes, in fact, I think it was.
all right, okay. So Stokes for me would be a question mark. Guidetti.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty much gone, isn't he?
Well, I think he decided. I think we decided he wasn't worth what we thought, and I think he decided he didn't fancy staying here round about Christmas time.
Yes. I think he obviously started the season really well. We were really excited, and then things just went a little bit flat for him, and then we kind of thought, oh, he's not actually as good as what we first thought.
Yep.
And he's sounds like he's been touting himself about other clubs, shall we say.
I tell you what might be interesting. What if nobody comes in at the stature of club that he wanted, and he turned round and started talking the type of money that we were prepared to offer him? Do you think we still would offer him, or do you think we would just say, no, you're not for us?
I think we'd say, no, I'm sorry, you're not for us. Thanks, but no thanks.
Okay, so that's Guidetti gone, Stokes gone, Mulgrew gone, Skepovic.
If we can find a suitor, then I think he'd be away. I would have thought.
Do you think he'll be gone, or will he be one of these infamous strikers on loan that you forget we've still got?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about strikers on loan as well. Yeah, he could go in that category as well. I think if somebody come in and gave us something remotely close to what we paid for him, then I think he'd be away. I'm pretty sure he would be. Lucas Zaluska, out of contract.
Is he?
I'm pretty sure he is.
It doesn't surprise me because Lucas Zaluska is one of these people. Look, if I can get the words out, Lucas Zaluska is one of these people that you think to yourself, this season must be his last.
Yeah.
Not out of badness, but you just think, what's the point? It's not as if when you come on we think, brilliant, he's almost as good as Gordon. So if that's the case, you're then left to think, is Fasan that bad? And if he is, what's the point in having him at the club either?
Yeah, I mean, I think Zaluska would obviously be in a far bigger salary than Fasan, so I think they'll have looked at it and thought, well, if you're going to play a little betting game, then Gordon's done fantastically well. Zaluska would have been good cover, but Craig Gordon has done remarkable. He's kept himself fit when probably nobody thought that he would. So can we move Zaluska along and bring in someone on a lower salary?
Yeah.
And give the manager more funds to go and strengthen the areas where he thinks he can get most benefit.
Right, so Zaluska's gone. Okay?
Yes.
Let's be ruthless. Zaluska, gone. You're fired. Who's next?
Dirk Borichter.
Oh, yeah. Is he, now,
That guy that plays in the development.
that guy who plays and scores?
Yes. Yeah.
So, Bo Richter, is he still good? He's still in contract, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, he's either going to be somebody we sell, or he's going to be an on loan and you forget he's still at the club guy.
Yes. Yes. I think he'll be gone. Surely. We have to find someone to take him.
But who would?
That's Peter Lobo's job.
To be fair to Peter Lawwell, and this is where I do criticise, who would on the salary he's on?
There's always somebody willing to take a punt. You could probably say the same for. I don't know.
The other way of looking at it is, do you really want a guy hanging about the club who's never going to play for us? Would it not be just as beneficial to try and find an accommodation between the two of us that he goes?
Yes, absolutely. Because you don't want them hanging about. And the likelihood, and I'm not saying this guy specifically, but the players all in the sort of fringes that just know they're not going to be there and are just taking the pay packet, they must be dejected, and they must really struggle. I know they're going to pick up a big salary, but really, if you're a footballer, you just want to play football. You don't want to train 5 days a week and then sit on the bench or end up not even getting in the 16 pool and sitting in the stand every week. You want to be playing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. Somebody will take him. They maybe not get the deal that he wants or the club wants, but at some point you've got to count your losses.
Okay, so he's gone. We find a way of getting rid of him. Who's next?
Frig Johnson, who's
the Norwegian boy.
Yeah, who's out on loan.
Yeah, I was thinking about him the other day, thinking I've no idea. I mean, obviously we bought him. He didn't cost very much, so there was obviously a bit of a let's just see, you win some, you lose some type thing. So,
yeah.
Have you any idea how he's got on loan?
I've not. Is he at Brøndby? Is that right?
I couldn't even tell you that.
I think he might be at Brøndby. I've no idea. But again, he's not going to fit in with the manager by the looks of things. I think, anybody who's had been a reasonable possibility would be making the subs bench or well, I mean, I know he's out on loan, but I just wonder that there's so much there that he just wouldn't be happy with. Timu Pukki is another one.
Yeah, he's not wanting him back.
No. Amido Baldi is another one.
I think I can probably break confidence on this in that when I was at St Anthony's 10 in a row book launch.
Oh, yes.
I had the great honour of having a conversation with Danny McGreen. And myself and somebody else had said to Danny, we saw you with Baldy, you just seem to be out there a lot and blah, blah, blah. And Danny McGreen said, I felt really sorry for him. What do you mean? He just shouldn't have been at Celtic. I felt very sorry for him. He was out so far out of his depth, he shouldn't have been here.
Yes.
And I thought that was quite telling that he actually was giving the guy training not because he wanted him to be better. He just felt sorry for him. It was almost as if, I got the impression it was as if you or I had ended up at Celtic.
Yeah.
He was actually just felt sorry because you were so detached from the ability of everybody else.
Is he not just like the wee guy in the playground that nobody ever played with, and one day somebody looks up and says, that's a shame for that guy. I'm going to go and kick a ball about with him.
Aye, I'll pick him first.
Mm-hmm.
Except nobody in the playground says, I'm going to pay £2 million for him.
And give him another 10 grand a week.
Yeah, I mean, there's the greatest ever right back feeling sorry for this guy who's a striker because he's not good enough to be anywhere near a Celtic team. Mm-hmm. And somebody in our scouting system not only thought he was good enough to take a punt on, they thought he was good enough to spend £2 million on a punt on.
Yes. And what has that deal cost us over the last, 3 years?
Ah, shocking. So, Baldy, gone. Got to find a way to get him. Yep.
Skepovic, we've spoke about. This one might be a little bit of a shock to you. Callum McGregor?
No, I don't think it is. I think Ronnie Dyler did the honest thing of he wanted to start bringing a youngster through. He put one in the team. Mm-hmm. The youngster rewarded him. But you can see gradually Callum McGregor went from being a start to being the odd start to being the first substitute to now that came on to them being sometimes he came on as a sub.
Yes. I just can't see anywhere where we would play Callum. I think he would rather play someone out of position than Callum. I think he would rather take one of his more experienced players and shuffle it around rather than play Callum.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but I think he would be on my list.
Okay, so Callum's gone. Who next?
Tom Rodgick.
Oh, yeah, he's another one.
We're fairly getting through them, aren't we?
Did he not make the bench on Sunday?
Yes, I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he did. I'm just not sure. I think the manager's going to shift on a fair few players, and I think Rogic might be one of them. And our friend Wakaso might be another.
Yeah, I can't see him being retained. There's been no indication. I mean, you got a player on loan that you're deciding whether you spend money to retain him, and you don't pick him.
Yes.
Although interestingly enough, what seemed to be happening for a period of time was he couldn't get near the squad, but was always on the bench for a European game and then came on.
Yes, and he started. In fact, he scored in the first Europa League game, if I remember right. A cracker from the edge of the box. Yeah, and he's, well, to put it bluntly, if we're going to be ruthless here, Harry, he's not done anything since.
No, he's gone. So he's toast.
He's gone. Pookie, we've spoke about. I think that only leaves one more player to go, and I think it's going to be Virgil.
Oh, you've missed Tonev.
Well, yes, I have actually. Okay, so there's another one.
Yeah,
Tonev.
And then, right, so those are people that we are either letting go or we're encouraging somebody else to take them.
Yes, at a very reasonable price.
Yes.
To us.
So then we have our policy of we sell a sellable player every summer.
Yes.
And you think it's Virgil?
I think it's Virgil. I think he's going to want a move, and he's probably going to get it. I think he may. What does they say nowadays? They may engineer a situation to get a move.
Yeah. If
that suits him. So I think Virgil would be, without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest loss of all. Without a doubt, a star player. And I genuinely think that he will become a top player. I'm assuming that he's going to go to England. It would seem the most logical step for him. And in the time that he's been at Celtic, he's done reasonably, really well. He's kept his head down and tried to concentrate. He's scored a fair few goals for a centre half, and I think Jason Denayer would be very grateful for their time together. And I think Denayer's come on as a player as well, but certainly Van Dijk has come on as a player. And in our time, and I think we must be very close to the point where we want to cash in on them.
So the only issue we've got there is the way the transfer world seems to work is there's a very strong possibility we may be able to retain him for the Champions League qualifiers. Because the downside of that is we end up selling him 3 days before the transfer window's out.
Mm-hmm.
And then have 2 days to buy a replacement.
Yes, I think based on what we've seen in some of the previous transfer windows where we leave everything to the last minute, and I know we've done that in January with the two lads from Dundee United. I would think that he would want to get stuff done quicker, and if there's players, we've spoken here about 13 or 14 players, Harry, who would potentially would want to move on, then I think he would want to get most of the business done as early as possible. We certainly don't want to have another ropey Champions League qualifying campaign, and if Virgil or anyone's on the swither about a move or is unsettled, you want that to be resolved before. In some respects, these 6 qualifying games could turn out to be our biggest games of the season.
Yeah, so the issue we've then got is no Virgil. Do you think we've got any chance of getting Denayer for another season on loan?
Yes, I mean, I think that's a possibility. It depends what happens with the management down there as well, though, doesn't it? I mean, is their manager going to stay or is he going to go? And then would you agree to a another loan deal, right at the start of the transfer window when you don't know who you're going to have.
Equally, you're a new manager coming into a club like Man City who spend, and they probably enticed in a name. I mean, obviously, Guardiola said, I've told you 200 million times I'm not leaving Bayern. Mm-hmm. So it's not him, but someone of his stature. The first thing he's going to get is money to spend.
Yes.
Is he going to say, well, I'm not spending it in centre-halves because I'm going to play a guy who's never played first-team football for Man City?
Yeah.
Or is he going to go out and spend cash and Denayer find himself as fourth choice centre-half again?
Yeah, well, what he's going to do down there is he's going to go out and spend his cash, and then he'll get in his centre-halves that he wants as quickly as he can. But, City's season is going to start, early August?
Yep.
So that's 2 weeks after our Champions League qualifying campaign starts. So it's going to be less of a priority for Manchester City manager to sort out Jason Denayer as opposed to what's going to be Ronnie Deila and Peter Lawwell's priority to sort out Jason Denayer based on what may or may not happen with Van Dijk.
So surely the biggest concern we should have is we have a completely new centre-back pairing going into these. As you said, there was 6 most important games.
Yeah, I think that's a concern, and people have been, expressing that concern, throughout that, in terms of long-term progression, where are we with centre-halves? Van Dijk is, sooner or later, Harry, we have to accept he's going to move on.
Yeah.
Does he move on now? I mean, but your point is right about Denayer. Does the new man at Man City want to keep him, or the existing manager, does he want to bring him back down there? I don't think that's something that you resolve that early in a transfer window.
Well, did we not, in Fraser Forster's second season, did we not play a couple of competitive games without him? Because he'd gone back to Newcastle on loan.
Yes. And then it becomes a last-minute thing to sign him up on another deal. Or, I mean, it wasn't last minute as in the last hour of the last day, but in terms of, a position like goalkeeper or a key centre-half, especially if your other guy's going, then it's a big deal, and you really want that to get sorted out pretty quickly. I don't think Jason Denayer will be sorted out quickly at all over this transfer window, because it's unlikely to be a priority for Man City.
No,
if they change management, if they stay with the same management, then the guy could just turn around and say, actually, I'm not going to need him. I know I'm going to go and get somebody else. I know I'm going to spend 25 million on a centre half, and I've got 3 choices, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get one of them. So yeah, you can keep Denayer for another season, and that's one thing less for him to worry about. However, if the management team there changes, that could make it a lot more difficult.
So, if we're getting rid of 14 players, how many are you expecting to come
in? 8 or 9 at most. I think he's going to trim his squad. So he's going to need a goalkeeper. Okay.
So do you think he's going to? So we're not going to stick with Fassan as a number 2. We're going to get somebody else in.
Yeah,
which would sort of say then maybe we have a 15th player going out the door, because what's the point in Fassan kicking around if we then go and bring some other guy in?
Well, you're always going to want to have 3 keepers, aren't you? So I think Zaluska goes by default, i.e. he's surplus to requirements, but he's on a bigger salary than Fassan, and Fassan may make it up to number 2, but he's not there yet.
Okay. So we're keeper.
We're keeper. We obviously need a first choice centre half to replace Virgil.
Or 2.
Or possibly 2. I think he's going to look for more cover for the cover for Izagiri. who's probably going to go to. He's going to miss some of the qualifiers potentially.
Yeah, I mean,
if he's going to be away in international duty, Harry, so that's going to be an issue.
That's one of the things I think world football has got its calendar wrong. When the Celtic captain, I think it's 10 days off this year.
Yes,
he's playing in June the 13th.
Yes,
and we've got European qualifiers. And if we were a more Diddy league, we'd be playing 2 weeks before that.
Yes, I mean, I think our first qualifier is around the 14th of July. So Scott Brown's got, 4.5 weeks between his last game of this season and potentially his first game of next season. Is that right? Yeah. 4.5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So the last Scotland game's on, Saturday the 13th of June.
Yeah.
The following Wednesday, he's a month away from his first game of the next season.
Yeah.
I suppose on the positive side is there's only so much. I would have thought your fitness could deteriorate in a 2-week period.
I don't see modern footballers needing to go through the running along the sand dunes stuff of the guys in the 70s to run their summer excess off. But anyway, back on to the players. So we need cover for, you were getting a left back as cover for Izzy. Not a replacement for Izzy if Paul the Tim's listening. No breakdowns, Paul. No,
Paul, you'll be fine. Izzy's still going to be there. He'll be having a mild heart attack just now. So full back there, we're going to need in the striking department someone who's going to compete with Lee Griffiths, the tea cake man, and I think he'll probably try and get someone who may be similar to Guidetti, but somebody who's maybe more in tune and more interested in playing for 40 or 50 games.
Similar to Guidetti, you're talking a slightly more physical...
Yes, target man. Guy. Yes. Yeah. Almost in the... My vision would be a modern-day John Hartson.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see someone like who could be, pretty physical, good target man, a little bit more mobile than Port Hartson was.
Yeah.
But certainly that type of player. And I think he's going to look for more cover in the central midfield area. The cover for Brown and Beaton, because I think his preference will always be to have Armstrong and Stefan Johansson playing in a more advanced role. I think we get more out of him there.
Okay.
And I think I think we've got a choice of maybe about 6 players for the 3 players in front of the holding 2. So I think we'll be pretty well covered there. And certainly some cover for Brown and Beaton.
So you're saying one striker, if you've got Skepovic going, Guidetti going and Stokes going, we've only got Griffiths. Do you need 2 strikers?
Yes, sorry. We would need someone like Guidetti, and we would need someone else who I think is going to be a poacher. Someone who's just going to run along the line and compete with Griffiths for that other striking role. So certainly in the striking department, and I think that's an area where we've really struggled over the last few years to bring in someone who's really going to make a difference. But yeah, I mean, there needs to be more competition to Griffiths. I think he's done fantastically well. I was delighted that he got the Player of the Month for April, but we're going to need more cover in the forward areas, particularly I think we're pretty sure that Guidetti's going to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would need more cover there.
Okay, so I mean, in any other positions?
In I think that would. I genuinely feel that he's going to trim his squad, so the potential for 13 or 14 to go. At least half of them wouldn't get anywhere near our first team anyway.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, I think you're like me in that I think we've been getting better and better as the season has gone on. And I'm quite excited about next season. My only concern is the two areas where I agree with you. Virgil will go, and it's maybe 50-50 as to whether we can get Denia back on loan. Then the other side, so that's centre-half, there's a big hole. And then the other end of the pitch, we're not going to keep Guidetti. Skepovic, obviously, for whatever reason, Ronnie Dyler keeps hinting in comments that it's really that Skepovic has never bought into the Ronnie Dyler way. So it doesn't look like he's fancied. So the two areas of the team with the biggest requirement for new blood, and the two most essential bit, the bit that stops goals going in, the two at the back, and the bit that puts the ball in the back of the net up front. Yes,
and that's where I think we will really find out about Dyler as the manager, and if he must have ideas of who he wants to sign, because none of this will be new to him. I think Guidetti, for example, has been on the slide for a while. Skepovic hasn't fitted in. I mean, you're right, talking about Skepovic. Did Dyler not say last week that basically he wasn't responding and that he didn't know if the problem was with Dyler himself or Skepovic? That kind of sounds to me like the problem's Skepovic.
Yes.
And, if there's a suitor out there who's going to give us what Peter Lawwell thinks the guy's worth, I think he'll be away. So these will not be new things. It's a case of, as I said earlier, Harry, is Ronnie going to get his first choice for each of these positions?
Well, and interesting, the other thing about that is that position of striker is the one where we've just mentioned the Icelandic boy, Pukki, Baldy, Skepovic, Guidetti and Stokes. So discount Stokes. That's 5 people that we brought in the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons, 2 to 3 seasons, where they've come, 2 managers now across those 5 have not fancied them.
Yes, exactly.
And we've spent roughly £2 million on Pukki, roughly £2 million on Baldy, roughly £2 million on Skepovic. That's £6 million. And then another couple of $100,000 on the Icelandic boy, and probably spent a couple of $100,000 on Guidetti, getting him in on loan.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere in the region of £6 to £7 million has been spent on 5 guys that we don't fancy.
Yes, exactly. And then you take the monthly salary on top of that. I'm not sure what that's going to be, but that's going to be a significant sum. So,
and prior to those 5, you can obviously go through Rasmussen, Brozek. You start to lose track.
Yeah, exactly. And so would we not be better, rather than having a scattergun approach, just targeting 2 really good strikers that are going to compete with Griffiths for that starting spot every single week, rather than buying 5, hoping that 1 or 2 makes it? To me, it's almost a form of gambling. Bringing in all these players, and you're hoping from those 6 players that you've brought in that 2 of them can fit the bill. And the guy who ends up fitting the bill was the guy who was favoured least in Lee Griffiths. So he's, pretty much came from nowhere behind all these other strikers to be the main man, the club's top goal scorer.
I mean, if I then chuck in Gary Hooper and Daryl Murphy, and I'm sure there's, do you know what? That way, I'm sure there's somebody really obvious that I'm missing in this list.
Mm-hmm.
You're then starting to be up at, how many is that? 9?
Yeah.
So we've had 2 out of 9 that have succeeded. That's not a good success rate for our scouting system.
No, not in the striker department. It's not. I call it the scattergun approach, because it's one of these 5 guys must be able to put the ball in the net. Well, 1 in 5 is not good odds. I would rather spend the money and get somebody who we were pretty sure was going to make it, and turned out to do a right good job for us. And you know, if that means that they come in and they're immediately become one of the top earners, as long as they're going to do the job, then that's what we should be aiming for. And I really hope that in this transfer window that Ronnie Deila gets his first choices in every area of the park that he is looking to strengthen.
I would really like, you keep going on getting the first choices, and that's what I would like. And I would really like us to get our first choice of a striker who's good. To be fair, I do understand with majority of teams playing this 4-2-3-1 system where you have a central striker, people want a guy who can score goals, got pace and can hold the ball up, and everybody wants him.
Yes.
So to be fair, we are, and I've gone on before about football inflation is such that I think Chris Sutton in today's market would be an £18 million player, and we're obviously not there. But by the opposite of that is, if we continue to fish around the £2 million mark, then we, as inflation goes up and we stick it to, the quality of player that we can go after is diminishing. So we to be fair to our managers, not to our scouts, we are expecting to find a gem for not a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Equally, the strikers that we do go and get, the ones that we really wanted, like we've been looking at Pukki for ages, we've been looking at Skepovic for ages, we really want Guidetti. We all signed them in the last day of the window. Yes.
So it's a case of, these guys obviously aren't the first choices, unless you're, you know, if you get a player on the last day, it's because you've got a price and you're not going to budge from it, and the selling club folds like a pack of cards, like happened with Dundee United in January. Or you're down to your 7th choice because the first 6 guys are either not going to come to Scotland, or they've signed for somebody else, or they're holding out for more money and we're not going to pay them. So it comes to the last day and you're on to your 7th choice striker.
So, based on what we know from that, then the place where we could shop to get a guy who would come in plenty of time is Scotland.
Yep.
Is there anybody in Scotland that you think, yeah, we may as well buy him?
There's not a lot that I would think where we could go and buy who would actually strengthen us for Champions League. I think the 2 guys at Dundee United we got in January, Mackay-Steven and Armstrong, were, in my mind, the best Scottish players that we would want to buy. So I'm thinking that there's not going to be a lot left in Scotland that we would want to go for. I think the other thing that's going to be interesting this transfer window, Harry, is the English clubs know what they're going to get from the next TV deal. So there's going to be a splurge in cash from the English clubs, which is going to mean they can go and increase the size of their squad if they so desire. But there's going to be more money going around for sure in the transfer window, and that may mean that people around the £2 or £3 or maybe £4 million mark, if we're ever going to get in that sort of price range for a transfer, then English clubs in the bottom half of the Premiership are not going to think twice about negotiating an extra 500 grand for a player or an extra £5 a week. If it's the player they want, they're just going to go and get them, whereas we're going to be haggling down to the last penny. And I think that makes this transfer window all the more difficult for us as a club.
Yeah, because that was the thing that I remember chatting about with some guys, as soon as the new TV deal came in for England, all that's going to happen is an average player who's currently on 20 grand a week in England will now be an average player on 40 grand a week.
Yes. So that can benefit us. I think with the Virgil move, if he goes, but I think we probably pretty much know he will. Mm-hmm. So that can help us there. So we can probably get a good fee for Virgil, but it's going to make it all the more difficult when these English clubs start looking beyond England and go to continental Europe or Scandinavia or some of these other markets. The clubs in Scandinavia will probably want to hold out to see if a Premiership club comes in, because they know whatever they get from Scotland, they're going to get 2x that from a club in the Premiership. I think it's going to be very, very interesting transfer window.
Well, we shall see. Cheers, Matt.
Okay, take care. All the best, Harry.
Right, cheers. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed podcasts 248, both A and B, with myself and Mark Cameron. 249 with I think an interesting guest will be along very soon, probably just after the last game of the season. Then we will have a special podcast for podcast number 250, followed by another realm of interesting guests lined up to take you through the summer. And as you can hear from the music in the background, it won't be that long before we're playing Champions League games. So, this is me, Harry Brady, saying good night and God bless. Good night.